third day of the conference and the day after the big party. But the turnout looks pretty good and many of you seem to be awake, so let's get going. So my name is Kip Olson. I'm the manager of the team that built many of the core user experiences that you see in Windows 8 today. And my devs have been asking me all week, what do people at the conference think about Windows 8? And I thought maybe I'd let you guys have a chance to tell them. So who likes Windows 8? All right, awesome. I think they heard that back in Redmond. Now I don't have to schedule a morale event next week. But seriously, I've been doing software products for a long time. At Apple, I worked on QuickTime and the macOS Finder. Does anyone remember System 7? Yeah? I did all the system beeps in that product. At Microsoft, I've worked on every operating system release since Windows 95. But I got to tell you, I think that Windows 8 will be the highlight of my career. I really do. It's an amazing product, and it's going to change the way we all use computers. But I'm really excited to be here today to talk to you about two features that my team built, tiles and notifications. And I think the best way to tell you about it is to show it to you. So this is the start screen. This is what you see when you turn on your Windows 8 PC. Everything you see in the start screen is a tile. Tiles represent your application to users. But more importantly, a tile is a doorway to your app. Tiles are connected to things people love. Tiles can summon people back to your application or make it so they don't have to run your app at all. Tiles are more than an icon. Tiles are an extension of your app, and people are going to make an emotional connection to your tile. So I think it's a great investment to make a great tile. It's the best way to have an awesome Metro app. The clicker. So I want to share with you today how to add tiles and toast notifications to your app. I'm going to show you how to make a great looking tile that'll bring users back to your app time and again. I'm going to explore with you how to raise a toast notification so you can engage your users even if they're running a different app. And I want to give you information about the Windows push notification service, which is the magic that allows your tile to be updated over the internet, even if your app isn't running. You'll leave today with information on how to build a good-looking tile and how to update it with our notification platform. You'll also learn how to use the Windows push notification service to send notifications over the internet and reach millions of users. And what do I want you to do? I want you to make your app alive with activity using tiles and notifications. Now, I have an interesting coda to the story that Jensen told on Tuesday about this phrase, alive with activity. If you remember on Tuesday, Jensen talked about a little dust-up he had with marketing where they didn't like the phrase alive with activity. They thought it conjured up visions of spiders and snakes. And I heard about this controversy, and I sent an email to Jensen, and I said, Jensen, is this true? What phrase are we supposed to use instead? And he replied, we're using brimming with activity. I was like, brimming? Really? Like, fill it to the rim with brim? Like, what kind of slogan is that? But Jensen is a living God, and so, I changed it. Later on, Alice, who works for Jensen, came to me and she saw my presentation. She's like, why is brimming with activity in there? Take that out. Jensen was pulling your leg. So there will be no brimming in this talk, okay? He had me going for a couple of days there. So let's dive right into tiles. We had a number of goals when we were designing the start screen. Goals that we wanted to achieve for customers. First, we wanted the start screen to be the place that people put the apps that they love. The things that are meaningful to them, the apps that really speak to them and that they use all the time. The start screen is where you go to find them, to collect them, and to personalize the start screen to be yours. We wanted everything in the start screen to be connected to the things people love. People live their life on the internet. They have a lot of things going on that they want to monitor and keep tabs on. We wanted the start screen to be the place you go to do that. We also wanted it to be the central place you go to find all your apps. Whether you run that app every day, you haven't run it in a month, or you just installed it. The start is where you go to find them and run them and switch to other apps. And finally, we wanted the start screen to appear, and the elements of the start screen to appear engaging and natural. We wanted them to be as rich and interesting as your app. And Tiles is the technology we came up with to make these goals possible for customers. But we also had some goals for you developers. First and foremost, we wanted to make it extremely simple to add tiles and toast notifications to your app. In fact, today I'm going to show you how to do this with just a few lines of code. We also wanted to help you be an artist. You know, I'm a developer. I'm pretty good at writing code, but I'm a terrible artist. You know, I probably flunked finger painting in kindergarten. I'm that bad. So one of our goals for the tiles architecture was to help you build a beautiful looking tile. And I'll tell you today about the catalog of tile templates we have that make it really easy, just given your content, to have tiles look great, have great animations, and always have great performance. We wanted tiles to be easy to update. As I said, the start screen wants to connect you to the things I love, and the tile needs to be updated and fresh and alive with activity in order to do that. But we wanted to make it really easy for you to do. So I'm going to tell you today how you can update your tile anytime your app runs, and also from over the internet using the Windows push notification service. And finally, we wanted to make possible for you to reach millions of customers with these live updates. And so we've built this Windows push notification service to make that possible. We do a lot of the hard work of maintaining connections to your instances of your app so you can just focus on your content and the things that people want to see. So let's just go through some of the elements that you'll see in the start screen and how tiles manifest themselves there. So here's a typical start screen, kind of similar to the one I just showed you in the demo. First thing you'll notice is there's a small tile, and that tile can be as simple as your brand. So example here, the Internet Explorer logo is just the Internet Explorer logo, and that's it, that's all that's on the tile. But tiles get more powerful if you can update them to be personalized to the user. So in the highlighted tile I have here, it's got a picture that's meaningful to the user. That's a lot more powerful than just your brand. Tiles can be wide and show lots of interesting information. It can show text, it can show graphics, it can show a combination of both. Or it can just show a lot of text that people find meaningful. You have lots of choices when you set up the tile. And we also realize that there's often information that your app has that people want to know just at a glance. They don't necessarily want to run your app, but they want to just know if there's something further for them to go look at. And so we have the ability to put what we call badges on top of tiles to show you status. I'm going to get into all these in a second, but I just want to kind of show you where these elements fit into the overall start screen. This is a summary of some of the things I said. I'm not going to go through every one of these slides. It's here for reference. But the important point I want to make is a lot of this functionality that I'm describing here, you can get very cheaply in your app without a lot of code. And I'm going to show you how to do that right now. So a basic tile at the very simplest level, it's the thing people tap on to launch or switch to your app. Every Metro style app that you create has a default tile. It's specified in the manifest of your AppX package. It's just an image that exists in your project. It can be one of two sizes, square or wide. And that's often good enough for a lot of apps. But I know you don't want to be good enough. You want to be great. And so updating your tile is the way you do that. So instead of just a simple logo, imagine if your tile looked alive and fresh and personalized to the kind of things people want to see. Doing that is pretty simple. And it's going to give a huge benefit to you. So let's talk about live tiles and how you make your tiles live, like I just showed. So the important thing, you remember I talked about helping to be an artist? One of the things we did is we wanted to make a set of predefined templates that you can use to describe your tile in a way that is meaningful to your application. We have a whole catalog of these templates, and I'll show you the catalog in a second. But the important point to note is we take care of the rendering of the tiles, and you just have to provide the information. This information you have to provide, it will be text, images, and you can combine those both in a single tile. We knew we wanted to keep the whole system really snappy and have good performance, so we put some limitations on the image formats. And we also have the ability for you to turn on a couple of animations in your tile, if that makes sense for your app. And finally, you can update it locally whenever your app is running, or you can update it from the cloud, even if your app's not running. So here's the tile. Here's examples from our template catalog of the different types of tiles that you could use in your application. I'm going to go through 3 of them, just talk about the applications that might go with these tile template types. So in the top left corner, I have a tile that is just a single image. We call this a full bleed tile. So this would be great for an application like a camera app, where it always shows you the last picture you took in your tile. It could also be something where you could let the user personalize the tile for your app, so it makes some sense to them. But we also allow you to have more than one image in a tile. So in this tile, we actually show 5 different images. They're all specified by 5 different pieces of content by your app, but we assemble them in this nice pattern and do all the work of making those look good. Now, an application this would be appropriate for would be like a photo app, where there's an event that you want to update your tile to show some scenes from that event, like the kid's birthday party here. And this will summon people back to your app. They'll see those pictures of that birthday party, and they'll say, oh man, I want to go see more about that, and they'll click on your app, and you'll be able to be run more often. This tile has both text and images. Now, one of the things we did is we wanted to make it so that you didn't have to burn text and images. A lot of times people spend a lot of time and effort trying to get the tile get something like this the way they want it. And on the back end, they're like burning text on images, and that's kind of difficult. It doesn't always look great. We do that for you. So at different resolutions, or in different languages, or in different reading directions, it'll always look good because we're handling that compositing for you, and we do it in a high fidelity way. And we allow you to have animations. You can opt in to having your tile have an animation. This is good for things that, like the example I just showed, where you have a picture and a caption, you want to switch between them. These animations make that really fluid and nice. And we spend a lot of time making these look good, when they come in, how often they update, is all something that we do for you. I talked about how for some apps it makes sense to show status on top of a tile. This is what we call badges. Badges are used to provide some glanceable information to the user about something that's happening in their world. We support two types of badges. One shows a number between 1 and 99, and one type of badge shows a set of predefined glyphs. I've shown some of the glyphs here. So let's talk about some scenarios where you'd use a badge. So for the number badge, this is good for an application that has a list of things out there that the user might want to know about. An obvious one would be email. The badge could show the number of unread emails in their inbox. It could be a social networking app, and the badge will show you the number of posts to your wall that you haven't seen yet. The glyphs are for an app that wants to just give you some lightweight status, so you don't have to launch the app to find out what it's doing. In the example I have here, I have a media app, like a music playback app. The tile wants to show you the album it's playing, but the badge shows you whether it's paused or not with a little glyph. And because we're rendering these on your behalf, we'll always do a good job of making sure that these numbers or these glyphs will render legibly on top of any image you might provide underneath. We try to be smart about that. So I've given you a kind of a basic overview of the tile architecture. Now let's show you how easy it is to get this functionality with just a few lines of code. So I'm going to switch to Visual Studio here. And what I have loaded is a project that you can find in the Windows 8 SDK. If you go up on the build site and download it, you can see this exact same code. This project is called Basic Tiles. And I'm going to show you initially just how to update your tile with a piece of text. So let me just walk through that. So the first thing you do is you're going to select the template that you want to use for your tile. So as I said, there's a whole catalog of templates. In the documentation, it describes them all in great detail. So you go figure out the one you want. Then you make this call to the tile update manager called getTemplateContent, and you pass in the identifier of the template you want. In this case, I'm asking for one called tile-wide-text03. This is a template that just has a single piece of text in it. What's returned is an XML document that describes the binding between your content and our rendering of the tile. So to update the text, what you'll do is you'll find the first text tag in that XML document, and you'll set it to the string you want to update. In this case, hello build conference. Next, you'll call the notification manager to create a tile object, passing in that XML document. And what you get back is a notification object. And then when you want to actually update the tile, you call the update function, passing in that tile object. And that's it. You know, it's 5 lines of code, and you've updated your tile. Let's go see what that looks like. So I'm going to run this. It's compiling and launching this sample app. So this is the UI of the sample. There's a bunch of scenarios you can run with this sample. I'm going to do the first one. But before I do, I want to show you what this tile looks like before we made any updates to it. This is straight out of the box vanilla tile. So I'm going to go to the Start menu. I have it in my second group here. So my app is called Basic Tiles, and it's the blue box that says Windows SDK Sample. This is the basic tile that you get. So let's run my app, and we'll update it. So I'll run first scenario here. When I click this box, it's executing the code that we just walked through. Now in the lower left corner, it shows you the XML document that was sent as part of the update. It's a pretty small document. The thing of interest here is the binding template has the name tile-wide text03. That was the template we chose, and there's our string. So now watch, magic happens. Your tile just got better. That animation is something we ran. Now it's personalized to something the user specified. And you just had to write 5 lines of code. So that's pretty nice. But I think we can do better. Let's go add an image to this tile. So I'm going to go back to Visual Studio. I'm going to show you how to set an image, a new image for this tile. So it's very similar to the text, just a couple extra things. So first, I'm going to request the tile wide image and text template. So this is a template that has text and image together. I'm going to set the first text element to sunset last night in the city. That's because my image is of a sunset and I want my caption to be related. I'm going to set the first image tag to the URL of my image. In this case, it's an image that's stored in the resource of my app. But this could be a URI to an image in the cloud. Just, it's just that simple. Now, it gets a little there's some features that we have with images that add a little bit extra code to this scenario. Remember, the user can show your tile in a wide format or a smaller square format. So when you update the tile, you have to update both the wide version and the narrow version. So what we're doing here is we're getting another template, which is a square template. It's one called tile square image. It just has a square image in it. I'm going to go find the first image tag, and I'm going to set it to the URL of my square image, another resource in my app. So I have to concatenate the 2 XML documents together. That's what this code is doing. Then I create a notification object and do the update. So let's run it. I'm going to do scenario 2 here. When I click this button, it's going to execute the code we just walked through. Now notice the XML in the lower left corner. There's 2 binding templates now. One to specify the wide image and one to specify the square one. And also the text is also there. So watch for the magic. I'm going to update. Oops, I didn't run it. Sorry. See if it goes. Let's retry it again. Yeah, the magic is not happening. It's not magical. Let's try it one more time. Okay, well, we're not getting an update, but the image and the text would appear. There's a nice animation as it comes into view, and it looks really, really nice. The last thing I wanted to show you was how to do a badge. Badge notification is just as simple as a text update. We get the badge number, template, we update its value attribute with the number we want to specify, and then we update the XML. Let's try restarting the app just in case that makes it act different. Try sending a badge notification. Okay, give me a number, any number, as long as it's from 1 to 99. 42, a classic number. All right. So there's the XML that was generated. Let's see if we have better luck with this particular one. Oh, look at that, 42. So I just showed you with a few lines of code how you can update your tile really easily. And we do all the heavy lifting of making that possible. All right. So there's 2 other things I wanted to talk to you about with regards to tiles. The first is called notification queuing. Now I've been getting used to this name, notification queuing, because in development we called it something different. For various reasons we called it the Tickle feature. And I always thought it'd be cool to be able to work on the Tickle project at Microsoft. Like I could introduce myself to you as, hi, Kip Olson, Microsoft Tickle, how you doing? But I think notification queue is actually a better name because this is actually a really cool feature. You see, by default, we always show the last notification received in your tile. But some applications have a whole stream of notifications that come down. Like, for example, a newsreader app has articles coming down all the time. And an email app would have email updates happening all the time. And you might want to reflect those in your tile. So we actually have the ability for you to opt in to this notification queuing where we'll store the last 5 notification updates and cycle them through in the start menu. So instead of just seeing the very last one, you'll see something like an animation of the last 5, one after another. And we take care of aging them out and doing the right things when new ones show up. But this is a really nice feature if your app is suited for it. And the last thing I wanted to tell you with tiles is this idea that we have called secondary tiles. So what this is all about is, say a user is running your app and they see some content in it they just love, and they'd love to monitor that content. They'd love to have that on their start screen. Secondary tiles is the way to do that. So what they would do is they would choose that content in your app and then pin it to the start screen. There's an API they call. It's this simple, small amount of code that causes a UI to appear that lets the user opt in. Do you really want to pin this? Then once they've done that, they've got a tile on their start screen that they can customize and do whatever they want is. And the best part about secondary tiles is they use all the same infrastructure I just showed you for app tiles. They use the same rich template catalogs. You can get beautiful rendering of your tile contents. They use the same notification system so you can update that secondary tile whenever your app is running or from the cloud. And the user can customize it and move it anywhere they want. There really is no difference between the two. The important thing to recognize about secondary tiles is when the user clicks on them, you want to take them in your app to that content. There'll be nothing more frustrating than seeing an article or a picture you're really excited about and you click on it and your app launches and doesn't show it to you. So we actually pass you some context in that lets you then navigate your app back to that piece of that item. So let me show you a demo of that. Let's get rid of this. I'm going to change to a new project. Okay, I'm going to get that going. Before I do that, I'm going to show you just an example using the weather app. So the weather app lets you monitor the weather in any city you want. So I'm going to add one. Give me a city, any city. I don't know how to spell Anchorage. I heard you say Seattle. So we add Seattle, Washington. Now, I can add this, I can pin this to the start screen just by simply swiping up from the bottom, saying pin city. This dialog is presented by Windows. This is to allow the user to be in control of what gets pinned to their start screen. It's theirs. It's the things they love, not the things you love. So when it completes and I go to the start menu, you should see Seattle back here at the end. So there it is. There's a secondary tile. It's already updated with fresh content from the cloud. And the user can push it around anywhere they want. So it's a really great feature, and I just want to really quickly show you how easy it is to write one of these into your app. So here's the code for pinning a tile. The first few arguments are just gathering the data that we need. The real interesting line is this one where we're calling the secondary tile function. And I'll just walk you through the parameters really quick. This is an identifier that's meaningful to your app. It's how you identify uniquely all the secondary tiles that have been pinned in this application. You get to define what that is. Then there's two strings which are the user sees. The first one is the name that's displayed on the tile itself. And the second one is a tooltip or a localization, like a help string. These tile activation arguments is the way you can navigate your app back to where the user was when they pinned the app. So you can get them back to that piece of content again. That's defined by you. There's some attributes you could pass in, like do you want to show your app name on the tile or not? Sometimes that's good, sometimes maybe not. And then you pass in the URI of the logo, the icon to show in that tile, if there's no update for it. You can specify some other settings, but once you've done that, then you can actually create it. This is an async call because that dialog comes up, so you don't want to be blocking your app waiting for the user to respond. But there is a callback, and when it calls, if it's successful, it'll tell you that. But that's all you have to do to create a secondary tile. And I think it's one of the most powerful things we've built in the tile infrastructure, is the ability for users to monitor what's going on in your app in a way that makes sense to them without ever having to run your app. But at the same time, it's an invitation to go back to your app every time they see that tile. So just more opportunity for you to have a good experience. Okay, so some best practices for tiles. They're there to display interesting content to the user. So you want to keep it fresh. You want to update these tiles as often as your app content changes. As we talked about, when the user clicks on that tile, you want to take them somewhere in your app where they can see that content that they just clicked on. One thing to keep in mind is users may never see a tile update that you do. They may not be at their computer when the update comes down, or they may not notice it because it's been scrolled away. So don't assume that they've seen it or will see it. And if they do see it, keep it what we call glanceable, just short and sweet and to the point. Don't go getting all Tolstoy on the tile. And please no display ads. This is not a mechanism to show ads or spam the user. They'll just turn you off if you do that. So that was tiles, a lot of information there. I also want to talk next about toast notifications. And this is the way you can engage users even if they're running another app. So again, I think it's really helpful to do a demo to explain the concept before we talk about it. So we're going to use the alarm app, and I'd like to bring up Arturo, who is the author of the alarm app, and give him some props for that. So as you know, a lot of these sample apps that ship in the developer preview were written by interns, and Arturo is one of our most excellent interns, and I thank you very much for doing that. And since I got him up here, I wanted to do a little thought exercise with you. Arturo went to school in Mexico, and I want to have him do a little translation for me. All right, so Arturo, can you translate alive with activity?
So I think that is lleno de actividad.
Oh, okay. All right, now, can you translate into Spanish brimming with activity, please?
Rebosando de actividad. I think that sounds a little strange, though.
Yeah, how about that? Brimming with activity is lame in Spanish, too. It's like a universal constant. All right, so I'm going to demo the alarm app. Thanks a lot for building it, and I appreciate all the work you guys did this summer. So another hand for... All right, so I'm going to use the alarm app to schedule a notification in 1 minute from now. Now, one thing that we ran into in rehearsal with this particular demo was, while I'm scheduling the alarm to show a toast pop-up so I can show you what the toast notifications look like. Scheduling them a minute in advance, they don't necessarily fire right away. It can take up to 60 seconds before the toast notification fires. And so I was finding myself like running out of things to talk about while I was waiting for the toast to fire. And I would start, showing, shadow puppets, like, look at the bunny. It was getting kind of awkward. So I had Arturo change the application to fire after 10 seconds. So here we're going to start a new notification in 1 minute, and I'm going to go run a different app. So let's say we're sitting here in the weather app. And the beauty of a toast notification is your app isn't running when the notification happens. And yet you can engage them and invite them back to your app and tell them something's happening that they need to know about. So here on the bottom of the screen, you see the toast notification popping. I can dismiss it, or I can click on it, and I switch from the app I was running back to the app that fired the notification. And it gives me the context, in this case, the alarm that I set right there. So I can interact with it and dismiss it and do whatever I need to do. So that's how the toast notifications work. Let's go into a little more detail about them. So they're all about getting an immediate response from the user when something they need to know about is happening. You got to remember that we're rendering these pop-up notifications, and the user's in control of whether they want to see them or not. You can initiate them, but the user is in control of them. And when you click on that toast notification, you're going to go to, you want to navigate your app to a location that can reflect that information back to them. And the best part about toast notifications are you already kind of know how to code them, because they use the same mechanism that I just described for tiles, for toast notifications. So for example, we have a template catalog. You can choose one of the template options that we give you to personalize and individualize the toast pop-up to something that makes sense for your app and your users. And we do all the work of making it look good. You just provide the content. Some best practices for toast notification. They're really great for applications that have some kind of real-time information. Good example would be a phone app that's trying to tell you that there's an incoming phone call. Toast notifications are great for that. In the notification itself, you want to have the information be actionable. It should tell you something about what's happening so you know whether you should bother to click on it or not. Like for example, in the phone application, you don't want your notification to say, phone is ringing. You'd like the notification to say, Aunt Myrtle is calling, because you might not want to take Aunt Myrtle's call. Also, you should use toast notifications along with badges and tiles, because remember, people may not see your toast notification at all. They may not be there when it happened, and you might want to show it to them on the tile so they know what they missed. So that was toast notifications. The last thing I want to show you is the Windows push notification service. So this is the magic that allows all this live activity stuff to happen even when your app isn't running, and to keep your tile and your app connected to what's going on out on the internet. So you use the WNS, the Windows Notification Server, to keep your app alive with activity. The WNS handles a lot of the communication for you, so you can spend your time making your app and your content great, and we can spend the time making sure it gets to where it needs to go. This allows it to scale to millions of users because we're managing the back-end service that delivers these push notifications. And the best part of all this is the WNS is free for your app to use. Any Metro-style app can use this service for free. As Jensen described in his talk, there's 3 kinds of notifications, and we've talked about 2 of these already. There's local notifications, and I've shown you code samples of how to update your tile or locally using just code in your app. There's scheduled notifications, so we showed you the alarm app and how you could schedule a notification for some time in the future. And then there's the push notifications, which I'm talking about right now. So let's talk a little more detail about this. So what I have here is an architectural diagram of how this whole push notification system works. The two green boxes are code that you write. You have a Metro-style app that runs on Windows 8, and you have an app service in the cloud that's affiliated with that app. And that app service can be written with whatever tools that you want. The two blue boxes are code that we write. There's the notification client platform in Windows 8, which manages all the notification details for you. And then there's the Windows push notification service, which is a web service that we write. So let's walk through how all these things talk to each other. The first thing you have to do to make all this happen is request a channel URI from the notification platform. So what a channel URI, think of it as a permission slip to write on a tile. You ask the client platform to give you that permission. It gets returned to your Metro-style app. It's basically a big string, looks like a URI. But you're responsible at that point to pass it off to your app service. So you got to hand the permission slip off to your web service in the cloud so it can then do push notifications and write to that tile on your client PC. So you get it from the system, you pass it back to your service. Now, your app service has everything it needs to do a push notification. So when it's ready to send something, you will first communicate the cloud server. The app service will communicate with the Windows push notification service and get authenticated, so make sure that it's allowed to send a notification. And then once it's done that, sending a notification payload is as simple as doing an HTTP post where the payload looks kind of like this. You pass in that channel URI, the permission slip. You pass in an authentication token that says you're allowed to send these. And you pass in an XML payload. Now, you may recognize that payload because that's the XML document that we created to send a badge update in a previous sample that I showed you. So the payload that you send in an internet update is the same payload that you send in a local update. So you already kind of know how to do that. Once the WNS service receives this payload, its job is to go send it to all the clients that are registered. So now it knows that using that permission slip, it knows where that payload needs to go. And when the notification platform on the client on the Windows 8 PC receives that payload, it can do the right thing. It can update your tile in the start screen. It can issue a toast notification. And this can all happen without your app running. Your app doesn't have to run for any of this magic to happen. Your cloud service posts a notification. The user sees your content and is delighted by it, and your app didn't have to run. That's the magic, I think, of the push notification service. So let me just show you the code you have to write to make the magic happen. So it's really that one line of code at the very top where you use the push notification channel manager to create a push notification channel. So here's you're requesting this permission slip. This is an async operation because we actually have to round trip to the WNS service to find the ID to use for that. So you have to implement a callback, and in that callback you'll be passed a channel structure, and one of the channel structure elements is the URI. I also want to point out there's an expiration time. Channels URIs expire after 30 days. This is so that if a user isn't using your app, they don't continue to get a lot of notifications unless they run it. So we recommend that every time you run your app, you run this code and get a new channel URI. It's a pretty cheap call. It's not a lot of code. That'll make sure every time the user runs your app, you're resetting the clock for another 30 days. I just sort of scratched the surface on the Windows push notification service today. There's actually another talk later on today that is going to go into a lot of detail. This talk is called Delivering Notifications Using Windows Azure and the Windows Push Notification Service. It talks about using Azure to implement the web service that we talked about, but basically half the talk is a deep dive into the architecture I just sort of sketched out with that diagram. So if you're interested in that, I really recommend you go to that talk. It's a really good one. We also have a portal that you can go to at manage.dev.live.com. That'll give you all the information that you need to do to set up that connection to be able to talk to the Windows notification service in the cloud. So we've covered a lot of ground today. I've showed you a lot of technologies and some code and diagrams and all sorts of stuff. So I thought I'd like to recap some of the things we learned today. I showed you how to make a compelling tile. Tiles are these doorways back to your app. They want to be as rich and exciting as your app itself. And I showed you all the tools that we provided to make that happen. We talked about the app, or the template catalog that gives you lots of choices on how to make your tile look great. We talked about how to update it both locally and from the internet. We talked about things like the notification queuing, where users can see content, the last 5 things that have come by. We talked about pinning tiles so people can have a customized experience with your app. All those things combined together make your app more and more compelling, more and more interesting to users, more and more likely that they'll pin your app to the front of the start screen and use it every day and really become emotionally invested in using your app. That's the goal of this whole feature. We also explored in detail the Toast notification system, which allows you to summon users back to your app, even if they're using something else or even if your app isn't running. We talked about how to do this locally. We talked about how to use it from the cloud. And we also have a rich set of templates that you can use to get a customized experience for your app with these notifications. And just like tiles, we do all the work to make them look great, animate great. You can just focus on your content and what your app is doing. And finally, we just spent some time going through how the Windows notification service works. And this is where the magic comes from. This is where you can get live updates from your web service. The customer doesn't have to be aware of if your app is running or not running. That's all handled. And you can scale to millions of customers because we're doing all the work of the load balancing and making lots of clients possible. You just have to focus on your cloud service and the kind of things it needs to do. So I'll leave you today with a mission for you, which is I'd like you to all add tiles and notification support to your app so you all have apps that are live with activity. And I think we've given you enough information on how to do that. And then hopefully we'll all have really, really compelling apps today. There's a couple of things for further reading that are in my presentation. When you're able to download this later on today off the internet, you can click on these hyperlinks. There's some really great overview, quick start documents, all the samples that I have are referenced here. And it's a great way to get started with all this. So with that, we're all done. I thank you for coming today and listening to my talk. I have to get off the stage and let the next people come in and set up. So I'll come out back, and if you have further questions, hit me up outside and I'll try to answer them. Thank you very much.